the weight behind the eyes, that dull ache that settles in the shoulders and never quite leaves. It's not just physical, is it? This bone-deep weariness, it carries with it a whisper of something more insidious, a feeling that if you were truly capable, truly dedicated, you wouldn't feel this way. The implication hangs heavy in the air. Your tiredness is your fault, a personal failing. You didn't optimize enough, didn't hustle hard enough. Their voices echo, amplified by the constant churn, a relentless chorus telling us we are not enough, that our exhaustion is a testament to our inadequacy, not to the sheer volume of what's demanded of us. This tiredness that feels like failure, it's a carefully constructed narrative, isn't it? A way to keep us perpetually striving, always feeling like we're falling short, that we haven't quite measured up to some unspoken, unreachable standard. It erodes our sense of self, making us internalize a blame that belongs not to us, but to the very structure that demands so much. Watch the dance of productivity, the hurried typing, the late-night emails flickering on screens in darkened rooms, the endless succession of meetings that often seem to generate more meetings. How much of it is truly essential? How much is simply performance? A way to signal commitment, to demonstrate busyness, even when the actual output is minimal, when the soul of the work is lost in the frantic motion. The clock becomes the ultimate arbiter of value, a crude measure that ignores the nuances of creativity, the bursts of insight, the quiet periods of reflection that often lead to true innovation. Hours logged becomes synonymous with effort expended, a simplistic equation that discounts the mental and emotional energy poured into tasks, regardless of the time they consume. It's not about the output, not really. It's about showing up, about occupying a space, about the visible signs of labor. The clock watched, not the task completed, your worth measured in hours logged. Obedience, disguised as diligence. We learn the steps, the rituals of being busy, even when the work itself feels hollow, devoid of genuine purpose or connection to anything meaningful beyond the next deadline. This performance of productivity becomes its own end, a way to navigate the labyrinthine system, to appear valuable, to avoid scrutiny, even when the actual value created is questionable, even when we know, deep down, that much of what we do is simply motion without progress. And then comes the guilt, the creeping unease that settles in during moments of stillness, those stolen pockets of time when the relentless demands momentarily recede. A day off can feel strangely wrong, like we should be doing something, anything, cleaning the house with a manic energy, catching up on the ever-growing list of errands, meticulously planning for the week ahead, as if our leisure time must also be structured and goal-oriented. Rest becomes a guilty pleasure, a stolen indulgence, something to be earned through prior exertion, not a fundamental human need, a vital component of well-being. The unease that settles in stillness, the nagging feeling you should be doing something, anything, cleaning, organizing, planning. Rest becomes a luxury, earned, not a right. Their ideology whispers, a constant undertone in the societal hum. Idle hands are the devil's playthings. They stole our permission to be, to simply exist, without the need for constant activity, constant output, constant justification of our time. This guilt of doing nothing is a powerful tool, a self-imposed shackle that keeps us tethered to the cycle of perpetual motion, afraid of the emptiness that might reveal uncomfortable truths. Consider the anxiety that bubbles up when you even contemplate stepping off the treadmill, even for a moment to catch your breath. Slowing down feels perilous, a potential freefall into disapproval. What if you fall behind the relentless pace? What will they think? The subtle and sometimes not so subtle pressure to maintain the pace, to stay in lockstep with the perceived demands. Dissent, even in the quiet form of simply needing a break, can be interpreted as a lack of commitment, a failure of will, a sign of weakness in a system that prizes relentless forward momentum above all else. The fear of slowing down, of questioning the pace. What if you don't keep up? What will they say? The subtle pressure to stay in lockstep, to not disrupt, your dissent, interpreted as laziness, your need for rest, as rebellion, conformity, sold as necessity. We learn to fear the quiet, the pause, the moment of reflection that might lead us to question the relentless rhythm, to see the inherent unsustainability of it all. This anxiety of stepping outside the lines keeps us in check, a form of internalized surveillance that makes us complicit in our own exploitation. They offer solutions, of course, neatly packaged and readily available. Self-care routines advertised as the antidote to systemic overload. Time management techniques that promise to squeeze more productivity out of already overstretched days. As if the onus is entirely on us, the individuals, to cope with the ever-increasing demands, to find personal strategies to navigate a fundamentally unbalanced landscape. We are told to optimize our sleep, to practice mindfulness, to find balance, as if these individual actions can truly counteract the weight of the collective pressures. And while these things can offer fleeting moments of respite, they often feel like fragile band-aids on a gaping wound, addressing the symptoms without ever touching the underlying cause. They tell you to manage your time, to practice self-care, as if the problem lies within you, not the relentless demands, the system designed to extract, to keep you running, on the hamster wheel, until you drop. And they blame your lack of stamina, our exhaustion, their alibi, the illusion of individual choice, the comforting lie that we are in control, even as the ground shifts beneath our feet. Think about the seductive power of that language, personal responsibility, taking ownership. They sound so virtuous, so empowering on the surface. But often, they serve as a clever mechanism to deflect attention, to individualize what is inherently a systemic issue. If you're struggling, if you're overwhelmed, it must be because you're not managing yourself effectively, not because the demands themselves are unreasonable, unsustainable. The possibility that the system itself is inherently flawed, that it demands more than any single human being can reasonably give without sacrificing their well-being, is rarely acknowledged, rarely brought into the light. We are sold the glittering illusion of individual choice within a framework that severely limits the scope of those choices, that subtly guides us down predetermined paths. Yes, you can choose between a dozen different brands of coffee, each promising a slightly different flavor profile, or endlessly scroll through streaming services, each offering a vast but ultimately similar catalog of content. But the fundamental reality, the underlying imperative of needing to sell your time and your labor in order to secure the basic necessities of survival, remains largely unchanged for the vast majority. The parameters of our supposed freedom are often tightly defined by the cold, hard realities of economic necessity. Consider the dehumanizing process of the job market, the endless filling out of online applications, the anxiety-inducing wait for a response, the competitive and often sterile interviews where you are reduced to a list of skills and experiences, the gnawing feeling of being constantly evaluated, constantly commodified, your unique human potential distilled into a set of bullet points on a resume. You are, in essence, selling a finite portion of your life, your precious energy, your very being, in exchange for the increasingly precarious means to simply continue existing. And the terms of that exchange are rarely, if ever, truly equitable. The inherent power dynamic is undeniable. Those who own the means of production, the factories humming with unseen labor, the vast networks of technology, the seemingly limitless resources, wield a significant advantage in this unspoken negotiation. They largely dictate the terms of employment, the perceived value of your labor, the very rhythm of your working life. And you, often facing the stark necessity of survival, must frequently accept those terms, even when they feel deeply unfair, even when they chip away at your sense of dignity and well-being. We are told, repeatedly, that this is simply the natural order of things, the inevitable outcome of a free and open market, a system that rewards merit and innovation. But is it truly freedom when your options are so narrowly constrained by the fundamental need to earn a living? Is it genuine choice when the alternative to participation is the looming spectre of economic precarity, the constant worry about meeting basic needs? Look around you. How many people do you know who genuinely feel a profound sense of freedom in their work, in their overall economic lives? How many feel like they possess true autonomy over their time, their creative energy, their inherent human potential? For the vast majority, the lived reality is a constant, often exhausting, balancing act between their own needs, their own desires, and the relentless demands of a system that often seems indifferent to both. The initial promise, the utopian vision whispered in the early days of technological advancement, was so different, wasn't it? The seductive idea that progress would ultimately liberate us, that increased efficiency would usher in an era of greater leisure time, more opportunities for personal fulfillment, a world where human creativity could flourish beyond the constraints of mere survival. And yet, for so many, the pace of life only seems to accelerate. The demands intensify, the boundaries between work and personal life become increasingly blurred, almost non-existent. The expectation of constant availability, the subtle pressure to always be connected, always responsive, has become the new normal. The very tools that were initially intended to free us from the drudgery of endless labor have, in many ways, become invisible tethers, binding us ever more tightly to the demands of the system. Our sleek, ubiquitous phones, those marvels of engineering, keep us constantly connected. Yes, but also constantly accessible, blurring the lines between the professional and the personal. The workday subtly expands to fill every available hour, creeping into evenings, weekends, those once sacred spaces of rest and rejuvenation. The insidious pressure to always be doing, always be achieving, subtly intensifies, fueled by the constant stream of online comparisons and the pervasive ethos of relentless self-optimization. And so we find ourselves trapped in this strange, unsettling paradox, surrounded by unprecedented levels of material wealth and breathtaking technological advancement, yet feeling increasingly stressed, profoundly overworked, and deeply disconnected from ourselves, from each other, from any sense of genuine, unburdened joy. The promised abundance, the fruits of all this labor, seem to accrue primarily at the very top, while so many struggle simply to keep pace, to find a fleeting moment of genuine rest, a breath of air in the relentless current. They never truly wanted you rested. A rested populace might just have the time, the mental space, to think critically, to question the prevailing narratives, to organize and demand something more. A rested populace might more readily recognize the inherent imbalances woven into the fabric of the system. No. What was truly desired, what continues to be subtly cultivated, is a workforce that is compliant, that equates exhaustion with virtuous effort, that internalizes the blame for their own weariness, thereby deflecting any scrutiny of the underlying structures. But there is a breaking point, isn't there? A moment when the accumulated weight becomes too heavy to bear, when the chronic exhaustion transcends mere physical fatigue and metastasizes into a profound sense of alienation, a deep-seated feeling that something fundamental is profoundly wrong with this relentless striving, this constant performance, that it is not leading to a more meaningful or fulfilling existence. What if we, collectively, allowed ourselves to rest without the gnawing weight of guilt? What if we dared to question the inherent value of perpetual productivity, to challenge the notion that our worth is solely determined by our output? What if we began to truly recognize that our value as complex, multifaceted human beings extends far beyond our mere capacity to labor? The possibility exists, within each of us, to begin to consciously step outside the prescribed lines, to push back against the unspoken demands, to gradually reclaim our most precious resource, our time, our finite energy, our very selves. It begins with a dawning recognition of the insidious ways in which our weariness has been weaponized, how the relentless performance of productivity has become a hollow substitute for genuine human connection and fulfillment. and how the pervasive guilt of doing nothing serves as an invisible chain, tethering us to a system that too often prioritizes profit margins over the fundamental well-being of people. Consider that hollowed-out feeling at the end of another long day, not just physical tiredness, but a deeper depletion, as if something vital has been slowly leached away. It's the cumulative toll of emotional labor, of constantly managing your presentation, of navigating the labyrinth of unspoken workplace politics, of suppressing your own needs in service of external demands. And then that quiet, internal accusation. You must not have managed your energy effectively. You must not have been resilient enough. This tiredness that feels like failure burrows deep, eroding our sense of self-worth. Think about the performative aspects of modern work. The late-night emails sent more for optics than necessity. The extra hours logged that don't necessarily translate to increased output. The constant need to project an image of being busy, indispensable. This performance of productivity demands a constant outward display of effort, often at the expense of genuine focus and meaningful creation. And on our days off, that nagging unease, the feeling that we should be making the most of our time, that simply allowing ourselves to be still is somehow wasteful. This guilt of doing nothing is a powerful form of self-control. The anxiety of stepping outside the lines, of not conforming to the relentless pace, is a palpable fear. What will they think? Will I be seen as lazy, uncommitted, replaceable? And the platitudes about self-care often feel hollow, insufficient to address the systemic pressures. The awakening will be a gradual process, a collective realization. It begins with recognizing the shared nature of our exhaustion. Perhaps the most radical act is to simply rest, without guilt, to redefine our worth. The tiredness that feels like failure is a lie. The performance of productivity is a cage. The guilt of doing nothing is a key to that cage, turned inward. The anxiety of stepping outside the lines are the bars we've internalized, and the illusion of individual choice is the wall that hides the possibility of a different reality. But walls can be seen through, and together we can find the way out.